Hey there, Philomena. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us here.
Hey Jeff, no bother, good to see you too.
That's great. Well, anyway, tell us, why are you willing to come on here and for me to fire questions at you?
Good question. I want to share the best thing that's ever happened in my life. And if other people can grasp this is the best news that you'll ever hear.
Wow, that's quite a tee up. Great. Tell us then, tell us a little bit about your background.
So my mom and dad were both bakers, and I grew up in a Catholic family. But my mom and dad started to read the Bible with friends, and they had questions. So they read the Bible with friends who were Christians, and they read through a book of the Bible called Romans. And for 2 years, my mom and dad wrestled with kind of questions like, why are we here? What's life all about? What happens after death? And one of my earliest memories is seeing my dad smoking and reading the book of Romans. And I was always intrigued by that as a little girl. And my parents actually understood through reading the Bible for themselves that it's not what they did that made them right with God, but what Jesus had done for them. And that's what they found in the book of Romans. So that's a bit about my background.
So that was your parents' background. How did you come? Did that mean you inherited that faith yourself, or how did you come to know Jesus yourself?
So my life changed a lot when I was like 4 or 5 years old. My parents started taking us to a Christian church, and I thought, oh, these people are really nice. And I heard the Bible being taught. I saw people praying to God, talking to Him like a father, and I saw just real genuine love for other people in relation to learning about God as well. And I just thought as a little girl, oh, Jesus was a nice man and he did nice things, and these Christians keep talking about him dying. Like, why do they keep talking about him dying? And it was at Easter time where I heard someone teach on the resurrection. And I just thought as a little girl, if Jesus beat death, then Jesus is God. It changed everything. It changed my life. And if he can beat death and go back to God, he can bring others back to God as well. So I understood that Jesus was the way back to the Father.
Wow. So even at that young age, you understood that Jesus had died, had risen again, and that changed your life?
It did. And I heard over and over again that Jesus had died. And I thought, oh, that's very sad. I don't want to keep hearing sad things. And I missed the point. And it really reminds me of the disciples. So Jesus's friends in the Gospel of Mark. And like they're hearing the teachings of Jesus, they're with him. And like me in church and with my family, I was hearing the teachings of the Bible and hearing that Jesus had died, but I didn't get it. And there's a part in Mark's Gospel in Mark chapter 8 where Jesus asks his friends, who do people say that I am? And people are saying, oh, well, Jesus is John the Baptist or he's Elijah. And then Jesus asks Peter, one of his closest friends, who do you say I am? And Peter says, you are the promised one, the Christ, the rescuer of the world. And although Peter had been friends with Jesus, it took him quite a while for him to understand that. That was his kind of turning point. And it was the same for me. Although I had heard the Bible being taught, that was a turning point in my life when I heard that Jesus had beat death. I understood he's the rescuer. He's the one that the Bible is pointing to.
And so you just had to trust in him and what he had done and turn to live for him. And that happened then at a young age?
Yeah, that happened at a young age. And one thing that's really, really great about knowing Jesus is it takes a huge weight off your shoulders. It's nothing about what we do. It's all about what Jesus has done. And in response to that, now I want to live for him. I want to go his way. I want to know him. And because knowing him is the best thing that can happen to anybody.
So that's great. You grasped Jesus and the resurrection meant so much, but you now no longer think Jesus dying is sad, do you?
No, it's the best news ever because sin has to be punished And that's right, that's just. And if you think about it, a lot of people have been crucified, but this was different. Jesus's death was to pay for sin. God was pouring out his anger at sin, and he's pouring it onto Jesus. And that should have been me, but Jesus took my place. And I'm forever indebted to him. I could never pay him back. I could never work my own way to God. So without the death of Jesus and his resurrection, I would be totally cut off from God forever. So I'm so thankful for the death of Jesus and his resurrection.
Great. So then you got to know him at a young age. Was it plain sailing in your life then, getting, from then on?
No, no, not at all. And oh yeah, like through the teen years, I was probably the only Bible believing Christian in my school, and I loved chatting with my friends. I loved my friends from all different worldviews and loved having conversations with them. But I did find it tricky being the only one who was following Jesus. But actually, I'm thankful for that time, because it made me actually say, do I believe the Bible for myself, or because my parents have told me this? And the more and more I read the Bible for myself, and the more I was hearing teaching at my local church, I was saying, wow, like how the Bible all fits together just couldn't be made up. So that strengthened my faith. But another thing that happened during my teen years, my mother got very, very ill. She was diagnosed with breast cancer, but it was in the very late stages. So the doctor actually was preparing her family for my mom to pass away. But God, we believe, worked a miracle in her life. She pulled through that time of sickness, but it actually was a painful time, but a joyful time, because God was so close to my family. He gave us the strength we needed, but also I knew that because my mom knew Jesus. She had everything. Even though she was sick in that bed, getting chemotherapy and too weak to stand some days, she had everything. Because even though if her life was taken away, God is still good, and she would be with him because of what Jesus had done. So even as her daughter, I was so thankful that my mom knew Jesus. That was the most important thing that could happen to anyone. And I was so thankful that my mom had Jesus during that time.
Wow. So it sounds as if Jesus meant everything to you and your family as a young age in your teen years. Did that continue then into your college years?
So probably in my late teens, I got very, very involved with the arts, and I had won a scholarship to a performing arts school. And I was also taken on by a singing teacher who just took me on and was training me as a singer. And I just loved that world of arts and entertainment. And when I was a teenager, it kind of brought me back to the gospel, how I'm accepted by God, not because of what I do, but because what Jesus has done. But when I was in university, I'd worked so hard to get into this college. It's a very prestigious college. And I put my career and what I wanted before God. And I started to drift away from the Bible, from being in a local church, because I wanted success. I wanted to make my family's life better. There was a lot of different motives in my heart, and it's not wrong to pursue a career, but it's wrong if you love the gifts that God gives more than God himself. And actually, I became quite successful in musical theatre. And I had achieved a dream that I always dreamed of achieving. And as I was there finishing a show with people that I admire all around me, I just had a deep emptiness. And actually, there's a psalm in the Bible. A psalm is a song, and it says, in God's presence, there's fullness of joy. And I had been running away from God, running away from him. And thankfully, a Christian friend was worried about me. And he's kind of like a granddad to me, even though I've never had a granddad in my life. But he flew over numerous times to London, and he was worried about me. And he put me into a really good Christian church. And it was a great time, actually, because I was quite lonely in London, even though I was very involved in the arts and pursuing a career. It was quite lonely at times. And he put me into a great church where, again, I started studying the Bible and was just blown away once more about who Jesus is. And I was thinking, how could I have forgotten who Jesus is? And suddenly everything that I had achieved just faded away. It just seemed so insignificant because of who Jesus is. So even though, you know, our culture will tell us you can find your worth in what you do or what you look like, you'll never stop wanting to be satisfied in those things, but only Jesus brings true satisfaction. Knowing him brings true satisfaction.
So I know you were making it in the West End and performing well there. Are you telling me that reaching that level, that wasn't satisfying, but only following Jesus was going to satisfy?
I know for someone listening that might seem quite strange, but it's so true. Um, I I thought that I would find happiness outside of Christ, not intentionally. I think it was a very slow drift away, and this is why I'm really passionate about um, helping others get into the Bible. But yes, only Jesus can satisfy, because he's not a ticket to heaven, it's a relationship. And knowing him brings so much into your life. It gives you a church family, it gives you security, it gives you a hope to look forward to, the hope of heaven. When you see the coronavirus everywhere, panic can set in, but knowing the God who's in control of heaven and earth brings such peace, such hope, such clarity to a situation. It's the best thing that can ever happen to anyone, is knowing Jesus. And the great thing about Jesus is he always keeps his promises. He never fails. He never once has failed. And there's so many more promises to come. There's so many riches in knowing Jesus. Like, I would, yeah, it's just amazing.
That's great. Great to hear. Tell you what, anything else you want to add or say just now as we finish?
Yeah, I really would love to encourage you, if you're listening, to, if you have a Bible, to go to Revelation 21. And it talks about a time where God will be with people who have turned, who have heard, who've believed in what Jesus has done and have a relationship with God. And it talks about a day where there's going to be no more pain and no more tears, and it's going to be perfect. And this is the hope that is available through Jesus, through knowing who Jesus is. And one more thing before Jeff tells me to stop is, this morning in the car I was reading Matthew 7, and it was talking about two guys. One of them is a wise guy and one of them's a foolish guy. And the wise guy has heard all about Jesus and believed in him, and he's built his life on Jesus, on the rock. But the foolish guy decides, no, I'm going to build my life my own way. I'm going to go my own way, my own thinking. And when the rain and the wind and the floods come, the foolish man's house falls down. But the man who had put his trust and faith in Jesus alone, his house stood through all the beating and the rain and the wind. And my challenge to you today is, if you've been intrigued by what you've heard, check out Ballycullen Church. They offer some really great courses on Mark's Gospel, on a Bible overview. They're not intimidating bunch, they're pretty friendly. And I would really, really encourage you to check out the claims of Jesus Christ.
Well, thank you very much, Philomena. That is great. If anybody does have any questions or wants a Bible, or just get in touch, we would love to hear from you. Thanks again for sharing. Appreciate it, Philomena.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.
Take care.